The F.E.A.R universe is indeed a horrifying and chilling tale with corporations hell-bent on profit and progression to the point they create an enemy they cannot hope to defend themselves from. In this video, you will be presented with the question of who the real monsters are, as we delve into the history and lore of this universe. However, this will be a two-part history, as there are indeed two timelines to choose from, the Monolith timeline and the vivendi timeline. So join me in the first part as we go through the twisted and grave history of the Monolith timeline. In the 1950s, a secretive military contractor that will eventually surface as the Armacham Technology Corporation had gone to the US government in order to buy the Alma industrial compound located in the urban district of Fairport. The contractor did this in order to gain access to an old military complex that had been beneath the compound, which the compound would later be known as the Origin Facility, and the complex later on would house a device known as the Vault. In 1964, the military contractor is officially founded as the Armacham Technology Corporation, where they begin signing defense and aerospace contracts within their work, and 9 years later, they had begun their bioengineering program known as Project Icarus. Project Icarus had stemmed from studies on microgravity-related health problems, which would be best countered with exercise, but NASA wanted their subjects to maintain bone density during periods of both microgravity and stasis. The scientists had been supplied with test subjects who would be strapped down for months at a time and were fed a strict diet to maintain their desired weight. Despite their efforts, however, they were initially unable to find a solution to the decay of the subject's bone structure. The scientists on the project had then decided to develop a carbon filter composite that wasn't affected by the microgravity conditions, and on the plus side, it had been light enough to add more weight to an astronaut. The composite had been applied to the surface of the bones to help prevent the bone loss. However, this too had been unsuccessful. The corporation had then decided to use newly created replicas of the subjects so they could perform surgeries on them. These surgeries involved removing each of the subject's bones and replacing them with copies that had been created out of the composite, which eventually resulted in success with the subjects not losing bone density. But something else had come from this success. The scientists had found that the light weight of the bone replacements had increased the subject's speed and dexterity that hadn't been seen before in humans. Despite of their success, however, the project would soon be shut down by the Department of Defense, since they had pulled out of the project in favor of a new operation that would be known as Project Perseus, and when Icarus would be shut down, all of the subjects would be placed in containment where they would remain until the future. On the 26th of August 1979, Harlan Wade's wife Elizabeth had gone into labor where she had given birth to Alma Wade. Harlan Wade had been a scientist who worked for the Armacham Technology Corporation, who would eventually pioneer Project Origin. Over the course of the next 3 years, Alma would show signs of being mentally unstable, where she had suffered from fits of hysteria, delusions, and vivid nightmares. Harlan at this time had told one of his co-workers, Marshall Disler, about the issues his daughter had been facing, where he theorized that Alma could be telepathic, and after some more observations, Harlan would tell the rest of the corporation that his daughter might hold some psychic abilities, and the corporation had taken an interest in Alma. During this time, the US military had been going through a communication struggle in Vietnam, and they wanted to remedy that issue, and the corporation had thought if they were able to give people telepathic abilities, then this would give the commanders the ability to communicate with the front lines with just a mere thought. Armacham scientists had then taken Alma to a facility where she would be tested, which she had completed each and every one put to her with flying colors. It was indeed a fact that Alma did have telepathic abilities. Unfortunately for her, this would only lead into further experimentation, and the scientists were relentless in their pursuit of the source to her powers. During her time at the facility, Alma continued to suffer from nightmares which progressed into frequent hallucinations and weak epileptic episodes. Eventually in 1984, Alma grew tired of these experiments, so she had decided to begin failing the tests in hopes that they would just let her go. But when this didn't work, she tried a more direct approach when she began to intrude on the scientists' minds, giving them vivid nightmares, delusions, and sudden mood swings. Eventually, Alma had been sedated, and the corporation had theorized that Alma could have done worse things if not for her young age, and if she was able to develop her abilities, then there would be no telling what she could do. Harlan during these years began to plan out Project Origin, where the corporation had recommended that Alma be contained out of fear for her powers.
Harlan, this can't go on. She's too dangerous.
You're telling me to seal my daughter away.
You knew it would come to this. We both knew.
And on the 24th of August 1987, Alma had been transferred to the Vault, which had been a spherical device that had been housed with a powerful force field which would be used to deflect Alma's psionic powers. 2 days from her 8th birthday, Alma had been placed into an induced coma so the scientists could avoid any further complications from occurring. In their research, Harlan theorized that the origins of Alma's powers wasn't inherited from both him and his wife, since they didn't have any sort of abilities. However, the scientists thought that maybe Alma could pass these abilities down to her offspring, and over the course of 7 years, the scientists put their theory to the test, where they had taken samples from their own DNA, which included samples from Alma's father too, in order to create 2 prototypes in a lab, which they had then impregnated Alma with these 2 prototypes, forcing her to carry them against her will. And in 1994, the time had come with the scientists removing Alma from the Vault and taking her to the birthing facility in order to put her through an artificial labor operation. And in the course of the procedure, Alma had awoken temporarily.
You will be a god among men. Take her back to the Vault.
In the following year, the scientists had removed Alma from the Vault in preparation to receive her second child at the age of just 16, who would later be known as Paxton Fettel. Over the years, Harlan and the operatives would test the 2 boys to find out if they were capable of becoming psychic commanders, with the tests being ruthless and abusive. In one of these tests, the young point man had been pitted against a soldier into fist-to-fist combat, where he failed defeating his adversary, which resulted in Harlan smacking him over the head with a bucket, and the only words of encouragement had been to move faster, telling the boy to show him he was worth something to him. In another test, one of the boys had been strapped down to a table with his mind being hooked up to a set of machines, where Harlan continued to shout at them, yelling at them to focus, to show him how special they are, until they eventually fell unconscious from the test. The boys would live in a large room together with a set of beds and a screening window, so the scientists could see their experiments in their spare time, or as Paxton had put it, to see their rats play. In another test, the young point man watched on in horror as Harlan encouraged Paxton to destroy the soldier in front of him at the cellular level, and eventually Paxton succeeds where his brother had failed, which results in him becoming Harlan's new favorite out of the 2 brothers, while the first had been worthless a failed experiment, a tool to be dismantled or thrown away. The corporation stopped using Alma as a mere breeder, but they decided to keep her alive, just in case something was to happen to Paxton, and so they had locked her back in the vault, to be induced into another coma, only to be used as a tool for the corporation's needs. 2 years after this event, Harlan Wade had copyrighted Paragon Fitness and a training manual, with them being accredited to him. In 2002, the US Army had created the F.E.A.R unit in order to combat paranormal threats to national security. However, the team's work had rarely been taken seriously due to how unbelievable the threat had been. However, they would soon find out just how real the threat was. At the age of 10, Paxton Fettel had established a telepathic link with his comatose mother while she had been imprisoned inside the vault, which causes them to merge their consciousness together, resulting in Paxton becoming violent and killing 7 of the Project Origin staff with his enhanced strength and his mental abilities. The onslaught, however, soon ended when the corporation had successfully contained Paxton, where he would remain in his new violent state of mind. The corporation had then conducted an investigation that concluded that Alma was to blame for this incident occurring, and so they deemed her to be a liability, which resulted in her immediate termination when they gave the order to remove Alma's life support, leaving her to die in her isolated prison. After killing her, Paxton had reverted to a normal state of mind, with him claiming that he couldn't recall his actions in the past events. This event would later be known as the first synchronicity event. It would take Alma 6 days before she would eventually perish inside of the vault. But strangely enough, even after her heart had stopped beating, Alma's psychic signature remained, as if her trauma and her anger was so great that not even death itself could hold her spirit back. After this, the people of Fairport had begun to be plagued with physical symptoms of illness, such as nausea and headaches, when visiting the Auburn district, which is where the Origin facility had been located. This sudden case results in the residents leaving and avoiding the area altogether. Following these events, the Origin facility and their operations had been shut down, with the facility being sealed, leaving the site to gather dust throughout the years. It is unknown if the Point Man had been born with his extremely quick reflexes, or if he had been experimented on further in order for him to be worth something in Harlan's eyes. However, the military was very interested in drafting the Point Man, due to the fact that the Point Man's reflexes had been 5 times quicker than any other human in history. 4 years later, in 2009, Armacham had created a new project, codenamed Project Perseus, which had been an experiment to see if Paxton could synchronize a group of cloned super soldiers to see if he could issue out orders to them with the power of his mind. The project had been located in an underground facility known as the Perseus Compound, or as it was originally called, the ATC Cloning Facility, which helped Paxton to develop his abilities, something the corporation would later regret. However, the project had also given rise to the development of the replica forces in response to the Department of Defense's directive to create super soldiers who could be commanded telepathically, and they would later establish the replica forces in 2017. And 2 years after this, Paxton would be successful in creating a link between him and the replica forces. Over these years, however, Paxton began to have disturbing dreams of killing people and cannibalizing them, tearing them to shreds while indulging in the consumption of their flesh. When the corporation had found out about these dreams, they decided to look deeper into this matter. However, their investigations came up only to dead ends. They even looked into the possibility of Alma somehow being behind these dreams, but they found no evidence of a link between the two. In 2025, the Point Man had been assigned to the F.E.A.R unit as their new Point Man. However, in the Auburn district, the doors to the sealed and abandoned Origin facility had been breached, which allowed a second synchronicity event to occur, with the spirit of Alma coming back to bite the corporation in the ass when she had successfully linked back up with her son Paxton. who then began a homicidal rampage once again, where he used his psychic abilities to take control of a group of replica super soldier prototypes, which allowed him to assume command over the Perseus compound, where he kidnaps Charles Habegger and Bill Moody in the early hours of the morning. He then headed to the birthing facility, which is where Paxton had been brought into the world, bringing us into the events of F.E.A.R. First Encounter Assault Recon.
Yes.
Sorry to wake you, Senator. It's about Origin.
What happened?
There was an uprising. F.E.A.R has taken command of the prototypes.
My God.
We can still resolve this discreetly, but we have to move fast.
Oh, all right. Let me make a few calls.
This wacko's name is Paxton F.E.A.R. He's the key. If we contain him, we contain the situation.
Fucker's got an appetite.
I think he has an agenda. It's not just recreational. He's getting something out of it.
Essential vitamins and nutrients?
What's his story?
Property of Armacham Technology Corporation. They're working on a military contract to develop an army of clones that respond to a psychic commander. Top secret, of course. F.E.A.R is one of the commanders.
You gotta be fucking kidding me. This is why nobody takes us seriously. Military clones?
A full battalion of them, highly trained and heavily armed.
A battalion? What are we supposed to do against 1,000 super soldiers?
Like I said, we put F.E.A.R down and it's over. Fortunately, the whole point of the program is to give commanders first-hand knowledge of the battlefield without putting them in danger. That means we should be able to corner the bastard without having to wade through all those soldiers.
How do we find him?
Armacham had planted a transmitter in his head. Should lead us right to him.
That's awfully convenient.
Assuming it does what it's supposed to. What about you, buddy? Ready to go to work?
You're putting him in the field? Are you crazy? He just transferred in a week ago.
You've seen his training results. His reflexes are totally off the charts. I think he can handle himself.
Whatever, man. It's your call.
Goddamn right it is.
Don't worry. You'll be fine.
Let's roll.
When they arrived, they found the facility as an echo of what it once had been. After some investigating, Jankowski and the Point Man had found the body of Charles, who had been murdered by Paxton. Eventually, the Point Man would come face to face with Paxton, who ambushed him, which incapacitated him long enough for him to make his escape with one of his replicas, where Paxton manages to regroup with the replica forces in his attack on the South River wastewater treatment plant.
The dead man's name was Charles Habegger. I remember him. But are the memories mine or hers? It makes no difference. He deserved to die. They all deserve to die.
In the evening, the Point Man and Jankowski lead their teams of Delta operatives in order to take the plant back. As the Point Man's team had arrived and entered the plant, they found themselves at odds with an enemy they just couldn't combat, with the spirit of Alma coming back, where she makes short work of the operatives by liquefying them right down to their skeletons, breaking down the bodies of these operatives at the cellular level with her great and terrifying power at her command. Eventually, Point Man had found Jankowski's team, or what was left of them, as they too had been liquefied by Alma, and Jankowski had gone missing, with him being presumed as dead. After proceeding deeper into the plant, the Point Man had been knocked unconscious by Alma after she had caused an explosion to occur. Eventually, Delta Force had sent in reinforcements into the plant that included Jin, who had been left at the birthing facility to examine the corpse of Charles, where they begin their search for the Point Man and Jankowski, where the Point Man wakes up to see the team after they had revived him. After this, Delta Force had sent in several units to defend the Armacham headquarters in response to the replica soldiers raiding the headquarters, which turns into a bloodbath, as many Armacham employees are killed in the conflict. As day turns to night, Bill Moody had been fatally wounded by Paxton.
Where is Alma?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Some secrets get buried deeper than others. but I know where to dig.
No, wait! You've got the wrong guy!
Hush now, Mr. Moody. The time for talk is done.
Please, no!
Where is she?
Alma!
If F.E.A.R finds her. Origin.
What the hell are you talking about? Monolith, what origin?
Regardless of the lesser resistance found at the HQ of Armacham, the Recon team soon find themselves graced by the presence of Alma, who then begins to attack them, and Shepard had lost all contact with the team as they are slowly but surely turned into mush as Alma liquefies them. This loss of contact with the team pushes Shepard and Rodney to send the Point Man to investigate, where he finds a sizable force now at the headquarters, but the Point Man with his lightning fast reflexes manages to improve the odds stacked against him. At this time, the police had been notified of the chaos, where they begin setting up roadblocks to keep residents from getting caught up in the nightmare unfolding, where they urge the residents of Fairport to stay in their homes until the crisis is over. Eventually, the Point Man had given Rodney access to the security system of the HQ, which allows another team of Delta Force to arrive on the roof with Jin, where they find the remains of the Recon team Foxtrot, and Jin stays behind to examine the remains. After this, the Point Man had found a hostage that was taken by the replica forces known as Bishop, and Point Man had been tasked with getting a Delta Force over to him so they could disable the bombs planted on him. Eventually, after an ambush by the replica forces, the Point Man had escorted the team over to Bishop's location, where Holiday defuses the bombs, rescuing the victim from his grim fate. But then a fire alarm goes off, resulting in the Point Man leaving the team in order to turn it back off. But after finishing this task, a gate closes, cutting his route back to Holiday and the Delta Force team, forcing Point Man to find another way to the roof, where the Delta team and Holiday are headed, which they are successful in escorting Bishop to the roof, as Point Man navigates a building under construction. But just when Holiday and Bishop had boarded the helicopter and the Point Man manages to meet them at the roof, they are suddenly betrayed by ATC security, who assassinates Bishop. This event causes Rodney to investigate ATC security's actions, which begins hostilities between Armacham and Delta Force. ATC security then confirm their kill to the commander, who then orders the security teams to search for Ian Hives and Alice Wade and to execute them on sight. The replica forces then receive orders to capture Norton Mapes so they can find the location of the vault. However, the Point Man beats them to it, finding Norton hiding, where he tasks the Point Man with overriding the local security, and once he does, Norton had escaped in an elevator. Eventually, the Point Man had found Alice, where she gives him and Rodney the location to the Origin facility, and she offers to take them there by her car, but Rodney insists on them getting to the roof in order to travel by way of a helicopter. However, as they ascend up an elevator shaft, Alma had arrived to take Alice to the roof instead, causing Point Man to find an alternative route, but as she arrives, the evac chopper had been destroyed before she can get on board, so she travels to the Armacham headquarters garage to get her car, and Point Man tries to intercept her but fails, and he is instead picked up by a chopper with Holiday and Jin, where they begin their journey to the beginning, to the Origin facility. Norton had then gone to the Origin facility in order to destroy the records on the Origin project. As the Point Man, Jin, and Holiday are getting closer to the facility, the replicas spot them, where they shoot down the chopper and they crash into an apartment complex, causing injuries to Jin and Holiday, which forces the Point Man to search for the Origin facility on his own. At this time, Alice herself had gone into the facility, where she is eventually captured by Paxton, and he intimidates Point Man, holding a knife to Alice's throat within the apartment complex, telling him that she smells nice, almost salivating at the thought of tearing her flesh from her bones. The point man at this time had found that the closer he had gotten to the facility, the stronger Alma's abilities had been, with trucks and obstacles seeming to materialize out of nowhere in her attempts to slow him down, almost as if she was just toying with him. At this time, the police had extended their roadblocks into the Auburn district as they begin evacuating the residents and other civilians in the area. Paxton had then taken Alice deep into the facility, taking her into the underground complex, where he then begins to tear into her, ripping her to shreds and consuming her flesh. As the point man had descended into the Origin facility, Jin and Holiday had been found by a medical team who tends to their wounds. During this time, the events of F.E.A.R 2 would begin, with Beckett traveling with his team to evacuate Aristide from her penthouse, as it was under attack from a Black Ops team of mercenaries hired by Armacham's board of directors. As the sun began to rise over the city, the point man had disrupted Norton's attempts to destroy the Origin records, which pushes him closer towards the vault. However, he soon came face to face with Harlan Wade, who had shot him before entering the heart of the facility where the vault had been located. As point man had approached Norton, he tells him that the power had to be diverted in order to gain access to the vault, which point man does so, but Norton had also told him to prevent Alma from escaping the facility, as the chaos Paxton had caused was but a small taste of what Alma could do to the world, which he gives him the idea to blow up the Origin facility. However, as morning came, so did the confrontation between the brothers, where Paxton and point man face off, where Paxton forces point man into a hallucination, which ends with Paxton telling the point man that he will set Alma free, which the point man puts an end to his plans by shooting him, which ends Paxton Fettel's reign of terror, as the remaining replica forces that were under his control had deactivated upon his death. But where Paxton failed, Harlan made it his mission to succeed, as he felt immense guilt over the corporation's mistreatment of his daughter and the Origin experiments, and so he decided to release his daughter from the vault, free to do as she pleased, and after 43 years of experiments, tests, and captivity, she was finally free, where she assumed control over her corpse and materialized right in front of her father.
Release sequence complete.
This is how it ends.
After destroying the 4 pylons, the point man races against time to escape the facility, but as soon as he does, he finds himself all alone once again. With no rescue in sight, a massive explosion occurs which propels point man into a nearby warehouse, which knocks him out cold. Sadly, the explosion does claim civilian lives, where the casualties had been a large number, as many failed to be evacuated in time. Beckett from the penthouse witnesses the explosion that envelops the district, and the shockwave knocks him unconscious. Some people then show up to take Beckett to a chopper with Aristide, where they dig up Project Harbinger and plan to use the research on Beckett and his squad. After this, Aristide and a senator have a conversation about the point man, where it is implied that Armacham had allowed Fettel's uprising as a way to test the point man's abilities, noting that he was a complete success. By midday, the point man had been found and recovered by Holiday and Jin, and after taking him to an evac chopper, they made their way out of the nightmare, where the point man had awoken to a huge mushroom cloud that was left in the Origin facility's wake. But just when they thought it was safe to breathe, Alma appeared again as she climbed into the chopper off the hull and forced them to crash land, which ejected the point man out and against a car. In his unconscious state, Fettel appeared to the point man, telling him he needs to wake up, that they are coming for him, which he responded by shooting his gun and then punching Fettel, but he was unaffected, and he just ran as fast as he could from the ghost. But then the point man encounters a group of soldiers, which begins a short fight that point man easily wins, massacring the soldiers, which Paxton had applauded his fight, calling it a performance, calling him Mummy's killing machine. Point man simply ignores this and continues to run until he came across a wall of fire blocking his path forward, where Alma in her child form appears to the point man and Vettel appears to his side, where he tells him that there is a reason for the three of them to be drawn to each other, and asks if he wanted to know what that reason had been. Point man had just continued to run, and just as he opened the door, he was met by a barrage of lasers all pointing out towards him. Outmanned and outgunned, the point man surrenders, with him being knocked out by one of the soldiers with the butt of their rifle, where Vettel had been watching from around the corner, stating out loud that he should have listened to him. The soldiers had then taken the point man to a South American prison that was owned by Armacham. When Jin comes to after the helicopter crash, she sees a set of footprints and a trail of blood moving away from the crash site, but then she sees the pilot, Bremer, had survived the crash. That was until he began to bleed from his ears, screaming intensely as his cells began to die and his flesh turned into mush as Alma liquefied his entire body. As Jin comes face to face with Alma, her eyes glow an orange color before she swiftly disappears, possibly sensing Beckett's operation, which allows Jin to escape the Auburn district. In the operation, Beckett was forced to undergo surgery while fading in and out of consciousness, where Aristride's intentions had been to use Beckett as bait in order to seal Alma inside of a machine similar to that of the vault that had previously been destroyed. The operation had included fitting Beckett with psychic amplifiers to his spinal cord and brainstem and several chemicals in order to give him extremely fast reflexes and increased strength. After the surgery, Beckett had managed to survive the operation and had woken up in the middle of a raid by Armacham soldiers that had been led by Colonel Richard Vanek. In the chaos of the assault, Beckett had found one of his squad mates, Red, being butchered by a surgical machine that continuously stabbed him over and over again, where he asks Beckett if he can hear it and that he needed to help her before taking his last breath, with him referring to Alma. Eventually, Beckett reaches the surface and regroups with what is left of his team, where they fight together against the soldiers, mechs, and paranormal creatures through the ruins of Fairport, and they rescue Lieutenant Stokes from some snipers, but fail to save Master Sergeant Griffin as they watch helplessly as Alma kills him, which forces the team to return to their APC. The team then moves to the Wade Elementary School, which the name is no coincidence, as Armacham had owned the school, which they used it as cover for an underground facility. As Keegan had left for recon duty, Beckett and Stokes had made their way through the front entrance to the school, where they are separated by Alma, who continues to stalk Beckett. But once he reaches the basement, Beckett discovers the Armacham facility entrance, which Beckett then discovers that this facility had been used for Project Paragon, that used children in their experiments in an attempt to create psychic commanders without Alma, where the children had been separated and categorized by 3 groups, but those who didn't show promise had been given drugs that would give them amnesia so they wouldn't remember any of those events that transpired within those halls. The children that did show promise, however, had been marked for Project Harbinger, which resulted in the creation of the Abominations and the project's closure. As Beckett descended down deeper into the facility, he battles against those who had been experimented on previously, the replica soldiers and the ATC troops, until he finds and kills Colonel Vanek. After this, Beckett finds Snakefist, who revealed himself to be a researcher for Armacham, where he explained that the only way they had a chance of defeating Alma was to travel to an Armacham research base that was located inside a nuclear reactor underneath Still Island, which is where Alma had been kept before being transferred to the vault under the Origin facility. Snakefist had then given Beckett an experimental weapon just before a replica assassin had appeared and decapitated Snakefist, taking his head clean off. After reuniting with what remains of his team, they travel to Still Island, all the while being ambushed by the replica forces, where the team fights together, but then, when things just couldn't get any worse, A bright light appears, luring Keegan away from Beckett and Stokes, with him walking into the light in a dazed state, only for him to disappear. Stokes had then ordered Beckett to find Keegan. However, every time Beckett found him, he was always just out of reach, and eventually the search continues to come up with loose ends, to the point Beckett abandons his search and continues to Still Island. Slowly but surely, Beckett and Stokes had made their way to a machine at the heart of the base, which had been the telesthetic amplifier, where Stokes straps Beckett into the device, ready to defeat Alma just as soon as Stokes activates the machine. But as soon as the latches were in place, Aristide had appeared, holding her weapon out, pointing it towards Stokes, where she prevents them from enacting their plans, since she wanted to use Beckett to trap Alma so she could use her for leverage in regaining her position in the Armacham Corporation. However, when Stokes refused to help Aristide, she was shot by her before Alma had appeared to claim her prize, where she knocks Aristide back before she locks Beckett and Alma away inside the machine together, where Alma had projected a healthier side of her body to Beckett before throwing him into a hallucination, with the scene being at where Alma used to swing before being taken by Armacham. This is where she begins to viciously rape Beckett as he fights for his survival in his state of hallucinations, as he battles the Phantom of Keegan, where he eases in and out of the hallucination, bearing witness to what Alma had been doing in these horrifying events. Eventually, Beckett was able to fight off the hallucination, but not before Alma had finished her assault on him, where Beckett awakens to find himself inside the sealed machine, alone. That was until Alma had opened up the machine, revealing that she was pregnant and that the base was completely destroyed.
Be advised the DZ is hot. Armacham forces are currently staging an attack on Command Post Sigma from that location. Eliminate hostiles and proceed to the rally point.
Understood, Command. This is Foxtrot 813. Preparing for touchdown.
During this time, a replica soldier known as Foxtrot 813 had been dropped down to reinforce the replica squads. However, after trying to repair a radio, a voice begins to beckon 813, with him experiencing hallucinations which had been deriving from the spirit of F.E.A.R, who told him he can defeat Alma, but as soon as he finds Paxton and 813 removes his helmet, Paxton takes possession of him, which 813 was the spitting image of Paxton, like it was meant to be.
Stand before me. Let me look upon you. I have dreamed of this moment, my brother. I am reborn.
After the events of F.E.A.R 2 Project Origin, the remaining civilians at Fairport that survived the initial explosion had been either driven mad by the presence of paranormal activity, or they had been executed by the Armacham personnel. 1 year later in 2026, the Point Man has been in Armacham's custody since the events of F.E.A.R, where they had been interrogating him to find out the whereabouts of Jin. Paxton, on the other hand, since he had possessed Foxtrot 813, had been searching for the Point Man, until he eventually finds out where he is, where Paxton helps his brother escape the South American prison, and he returns to Fairport with the Point Man in order to regroup with the F.E.A.R unit.
I thought you'd be happy to see us.
You! I knew if you were alive, you'd come for me. Where the hell have you been? Doesn't matter. I have something here you need to see. His name is Michael Beckett, Delta Squad. Apparently, he got himself mixed up with Armacham's secret project. Alma.
See, family, as I've been telling you all along, brother.
The bitch became obsessed with me. Don't you people understand? Why was she ever created? What good did they think would come of that nightmare? Horrible. Raped me. Do you hear me, Armacham? She's fucking pregnant!
A ghost in the flesh.
You need to act immediately. Stop this from happening.
As if she knows anything.
These paranormal anomalies are like contractions. Judging by the severity of them already, I'd say we don't have much time. Are you with me on this?
The brothers rush to the Port Authority airport for all the answers they seek. All the while, the Point Man continues to see Alma in her child form. Once they arrive, they battle the Armacham personnel, mixing their fighting styles into an unstoppable force, and they eventually find Beckett, who isn't happy to see the brothers.
I've told you everything. Just leave me be. Who are you? Who are you? What do you want?
Allow me. This will kill him. This man is a shell, brother. Empty. All he desires is to forget. All the testing, the surgeries. They weren't able to create any new prototypes with Mother, so they used artificial means. He's like us, brother. Or at least manufactured to be like us.
Because of you.
mother. Conception.
Filthy maggot that crawls inside her! She's no longer your mother, child. Must cannot be allowed.
Say hello to mother.
After gaining the information they sought about Alma's pregnancy, the brothers go to the ward facility that was used by Harlan Wade to study and develop the prototypes. Upon arrival, the two begin destroying anything that resembled memories from their childhood, until a supernatural manifestation of Harlan Wade, known as the Creep, appears with the goal to destroy them, all the while taunting them, with him claiming that their power should be his. However, the Point Man soon makes short work of the Creep, putting an end to Harlan's plans.
My children, Alma, you were to be my legacy, but you are all monsters.
Eventually, the two are reunited with their mother, where they can see she had been lying on the floor of the room, where F.E.A.R tells Point Man that they need to consume her flesh in order to become gods above all else. However, the Point Man disagrees with him, pulling out his pistol ready to finish the mission given to him by Jin, to kill the baby, before he is stopped by F.E.A.R, which sparks a conflict between the two.
It never had to be like this, brother. We could have been like gods.
Things seem normal, but I'm not sure I know what that means anymore. I just have to believe you completed your mission. I know it was difficult, but the survivors of this ordeal owe you their lives. I know I do.
And that is it for the Monolith timeline of the F.E.A.R universe. However, there is indeed another to explore, so join me next time as we uncover the events in the Vivendi timeline. But before you go, tell me of which ending to the third game you believe truly transpired, as I chose the more hopeful ending, but maybe you think the other ending is more fitting for the series. Tell me below in the comments section. Thank you for watching, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already for more content like this in the future. A special thank you goes out to the members of the channel. Your extra mile support is always greatly appreciated, and if you want to join the roster of the names listed here, then become a member for more exclusive rewards, including early access to new videos and updates for what I'm currently working on, and I hope to see you all back here on the next one, and be sure to leave having a good one.